is the NFC North's best quarterback. And my take was, no, we're getting into a discussion, if you count everything, that Caleb Williams may very quickly be the best quarterback. You've got to count everything with a quarterback, including the cost. Not including what a quarterback costs. There's a reason the Bills have no Pro Bowlers on defense and the Bears have a stacked roster. It's because Caleb Williams costs $10 million a year. It's a 3.5% cap hit. Lamar Jackson's going to be a 25% cap hit. If you count mobility and health and arm and lack of turnovers, this year he corrected negative plays. It's Caleb Williams. I don't care about resume. I'm not into past celebrations or past failures. I'm into projecting 2026 Labor Day weekend. Is Caleb the best quarterback in the league? Because discussing quarterbacks without also acknowledging the cost is like doing your family budget when you sit down with your wife and not counting the Maserati you bought last year without asking her. Yeah, it's going to kind of screw up the budget. Not going to have a nanny this year. Not going to be going to the movies much. Forget second vacation. Can't afford one. I looked up the stats this morning. Only one quarterback in the league had more big-time throws, 20-plus throws, than Caleb Williams. It wasn't Josh Allen, Mahomes, and it wasn't Lamar Jackson. Caleb Williams has the lowest interception rate since he entered the league, better than Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. He is now officially the fastest quarterback on clock, better than Lamar, faster than Josh Allen. And oh, by the way, he also had the longest completion in the league last year. So if you count everything and you have to count cost, there is a reason Drake May, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams have really good rosters and the Buffalo Bills don't have a Pro Bowler, or why the Chiefs' O-line and run game stinks.
To be perfectly honest, I find this particular argument to be conceptually disorganized, especially now that the discussion has veered into completely unrelated territory. The core point seems to be getting lost. However, looking at the specific data point that was brought up, Matthew Stafford led the league last season with 47 big-time throws. For context, Dak Prescott had 31, as did Bo Nix. Sam Darnold and Trevor Lawrence each recorded 29, while Baker Mayfield and Caleb Williams both finished with 28. So, I'm genuinely uncertain what conclusion is being drawn from that particular statistic. More importantly, I strongly believe we should avoid evaluating quarterbacks based solely on their volume of big-time throws. This metric is heavily influenced by the offensive system they operate within and the specific strategic goals of that scheme. It's not a standalone indicator of quality or success. For example, Dak Prescott had his 31 big-time throws, and yet his team didn't qualify for the postseason. How did that work out for him? Baker Mayfield posted 28 big-time throws, and similarly, he was watching the playoffs from home. My point is that raw numbers like these must be contextualized to have any real meaning. If we examine the big-time throw leaders from the previous season, we see Joe Burrow at 38, Josh Allen at 37, Justin Herbert, and Sam Darnold both at 33, Lamar Jackson with 30, and Geno Smith at 28. Notably absent from that list are the quarterbacks who actually appeared in the Super Bowl. In fact, if we exclude Josh Allen, we only have one quarterback from that group who even made it to a conference championship game. Looking further back to the 2023 season reinforces this pattern. All these statistics require careful, targeted context to be properly understood. In 2023, Brock Purdy ranked 10th in big-time throws, and Patrick Mahomes was 12th. However, the majority of quarterbacks ranked 9th or higher that year did not advance to the Super Bowl. The AFC Championship game that season featured the Chiefs and the Ravens, yet Lamar Jackson isn't on that top-tier big-time throw list. The NFC Championship was between the 49ers and the Lions, and Jared Goff isn't there either. Do you see what I'm getting at? If you intend to use a very specific, isolated metric like this as the foundation of your argument, you're likely fighting a losing battle. Tua Tagovailoa, for instance, had 35 big-time throws in 2023. I sincerely doubt anyone was using that stat to argue that he was an elite, top-tier quarterback. The conversation now is also factoring in salary cap implications, which is an entirely different discussion altogether. I do this myself. I've created lists ranking quarterbacks based on a combination of age, health, contract value, and other variables. That's where you can legitimately argue that you might prefer a younger, cheaper player like Drake May or Caleb Williams over an established superstar like Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. People often get upset at that kind of take. They react with disbelief, saying things like, "You'd pick Caleb Williams over a 3-time Super Bowl champion?" But that reaction completely misses the point of the exercise. It's a different conversation with different parameters. However, the way this current argument is being constructed just doesn't feel inherently logical or accurate to me. I mentioned this a couple of years ago, and I was, not to boast, but remarkably prescient. I observed how desperately people seem to want the Chicago Bears fan base to be relevant and successful. Colin even had multiple guests on his show who essentially argued that the NFL itself wanted the Bears to succeed. There was discussion about how the schedule was supposedly broken down to favor them, with the idea that the league wanted to elevate Caleb Williams because the Chicago market is so massive and lucrative. Seeing the engagement and the views my own content was generating whenever I discussed the Bears, I told you all that you were about to be inundated with an overwhelming amount of content surrounding Caleb and that team. I predicted it would be difficult to sift through the noise because it would be absolute chaos. And right on cue, we have Nick predicting that Caleb Williams will be an MVP candidate and that the Bears are going to the Super Bowl. I previously made a whole video addressing this dynamic, pointing out that I could, without a doubt, get significantly more views and engagement if I simply echoed that sentiment. If I said, Caleb Williams is going to the Super Bowl, people would rally behind it with excitement. But I made a conscious decision not to do that. I refuse to have that kind of superficial conversation. My goal is to have the most accurate, grounded, and substantive discussions I possibly can. That way, when I do eventually make a bold prediction, like saying I believe Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the league, or that the Bears will win a championship, it will actually mean something. It will carry weight because you'll know I'm not just chasing clicks. I'm striving for accuracy and basing my opinions on genuine observation and analysis. That's precisely why I've consistently maintained my stance. Even now, with the goal for 2026 being to field the greatest offense ever, I've been saying since week 3 of last season that if Caleb simply starts hitting his layups, the routine throws an NFL quarterback must make. This offense has the potential to be historically great. I often use the Kansas City Chiefs from around 2018 or 2019 as a reference point. That was when their offense was firing on all cylinders, leaving everyone in awe. Depending on which metric you prioritize, that Chiefs offense ranks among the best ever. I think one advanced metric had them second or third all time, behind only the undefeated Patriots team. Nick once argued that he didn't believe a particular Colts offense was better than that legendary Patriots squad, even if the numbers suggested otherwise for a period. Technically, most records show that the 2007 Patriots have the best offense in NFL history based on scoring and yardage. I'm not going to go that far back or get bogged down in parsing the exact definition of greatest offense ever. That's why I simply reference the 2018 Chiefs or whichever version you personally felt was their most dominant. Interestingly, when they actually won the Super Bowl in 2019, Patrick Mahomes' raw numbers dropped significantly. His touchdown passes were cut nearly in half. So it's not always about gaudy statistics. It's about overall effectiveness and timing. But I genuinely believe that level of offensive dominance is within reach for the Chicago Bears. I think that's the ceiling Caleb Williams is envisioning when he talks about his goals. I know some people interpret statements like that in different ways, either as overly ambitious or as setting a necessary standard. It's similar to when he set his personal goals for his rookie season, 4,000 yards and a 70% completion rate. He missed that mark, particularly on the completion percentage. The problem I have is that when I tried to discuss this in another video, someone argued that his completion percentage was only low because of dropped passes. They claimed the advanced analytics, when adjusted for drops and throwaways, told a different story. But the reality, when you actually look at those adjusted numbers, is that he was at the bottom of the league. He was grouped with players like Marcus Mariota, who barely played, and rookies like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, who don't have enough NFL experience to count. When you filter for legitimate full-time starting quarterbacks with a significant body of work, Caleb Williams ranked at the very bottom. That is simply the factual reality. When he corrects that, when he starts completing those routine passes at a higher clip, That's when the Bears' offense can ascend to that elite level. But to try and paint a picture right now, at this moment, that Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the entire National Football League? I don't know about that. To me, that feels like you're cooking the books pretty aggressively. You're manipulating the data to fit a narrative. The argument then pivots to saying Josh Allen didn't lead the league in big-time throws last season, with the implication being that it diminishes his standing. The counter to that is obvious. Josh Allen didn't have the caliber of offensive pieces that some other quarterbacks had. Lamar Jackson's offense isn't even predicated on generating a high volume of traditional big-time throws because of his unique rushing ability and the scheme's design. So it's like, wait a minute, what are we really saying here? Matthew Stafford led the league in that category, and frankly, a large portion of that can be attributed to him throwing to receivers who were wide open all day. A lot of that success is a collaboration between Stafford's arm, Puka Nacua's route running, Cooper Kupp's reliability, and Sean McVay's play design. I can guarantee you that Josh Allen would have a significantly higher number of big-time throws if he had Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Sean McVay scheming things up for him. That's precisely why I take issue with these kinds of isolated takes. At the heart of it, I understand that the goal is to elevate Caleb Williams and build a compelling narrative around him. But I'm frustrated that I constantly have to remind everyone of this, and I'm hopeful we can eventually move past it and have more grounded conversations. I fear that every time I make a video like this, one that pushes back against an overly optimistic narrative and asks for more nuance, I'm going to receive a ton of pushback. People often just want to hear the positives and the cheerleading. They want the hype. But make no mistake about it, we have to remember the trajectory of the discourse. Going into this past season and throughout the first few weeks, you had people like Colin saying that it wasn't going to work. I pointed out how ridiculous that was at the time. Colin was even speculating that the backup quarterback might end up starting over Caleb Williams. Then, within the first few weeks of the season, he was declaring that it was definitely not going to work. And now, just a few months later, the narrative has completely flipped to saying he's the best quarterback in the NFL, supported by cherry-picked stats about big-time throws and salary cap hits. That, to me personally, seems messy and inconsistent. It lacks intellectual coherence. I think you have to find the grounded middle ground in any of these takes. Just as I rejected the initial narrative that he was destined to fail, that he didn't have enough of this or too much of that, I also reject the current narrative that he's already the best. I remember when we were all looking at that training camp footage of him throwing into a net, and the instant reaction was, see, he's not good. Look at his body language. He's so mad at himself. He's a bust. It was absurd then, and the opposite extreme is equally absurd now. I believe that when you demand a grounded perspective and disciplined analysis, it allows you to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of a player's career much more accurately. For a team like the Chicago Bears, with a fan base as massive and passionate as theirs, consistently finding that balanced perspective is going to be incredibly difficult. The potential for engagement is just too massive. The temptation to swing from one extreme to the other is overwhelming. I don't say this to downplay Caleb Williams' potential. I see it as trying to add essential context to the conversation. It's the same dynamic as the whole MVP and Super Bowl prediction. If I came on here right now and simply said, Colin is 100% right, Caleb Williams is without a doubt the best quarterback in the NFL, that statement would land so much more smoothly. It would be easily digestible. It would get the videos popping, and the comment section would be filled with people saying, this guy gets it, I'm subscribing. But if you think I'm only going to be a cheerleader, if you think I'm only going to say positive things and refuse to add any critical context, then you're probably in the wrong place. This current debate is a perfect example of why that approach is necessary. And to be perfectly clear, none of this is to say that Caleb Williams won't eventually become the best quarterback in the NFL. It's not to say that the Bears won't field the greatest offense of all time in 2026. It's simply to say that the argument being made right now, based on the evidence we have right now, is not a sound one. It's a weird spot for me to be in, pushing back against hype on both sides, but those are genuinely my thoughts on the matter. I would absolutely love to hear your perspective on this. What do you all think about the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams heading into next season? Do you genuinely believe he is the best quarterback in the NFL at this current moment? And do you think it's a realistic expectation that in 2026, with Ben Johnson coordinating the offense, they can indeed field the greatest offense in NFL history? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I make it a point to read every single comment. So, whether you agree with me wholeheartedly or think I'm completely off base, either way, let's get some discussion started. Let's get into some healthy debates and disagreements. But ultimately, the goal is to have some fun with it and enjoy the discourse. And please, if you haven't already, do consider subscribing to the channel. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love for you to be a part of it. I want to build something that we all feel genuinely connected to, something that we're all really excited to be a part of. I think we are well on our way to achieving that goal. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.